Drug gangs and corrupt police terrorized the inhabitants of the poor quarters of Rio de Janeiro. The screenplay for this film is taken straight out of real life. The director, Luciano Vidigal, and his film crew grew up in these slums themselves. They were outcasts. With their stories, they want to show the complex world of the ghettos and break down prejudices. Life in the chaotically sprawling settlements is laid bare. A few houses further on, a French crew is producing a music video, using every cliché. The image of Rio as the happiest place on earth sells well. Every year, 3 million tourists visit the second largest city in Brazil, and soon there are going to be many more. In 2014, the Football World Cup will be held here, and 2 years later, the Olympic Games. The preparations for these mega events are happening at a time when the economy is flourishing like never before. On the Copacabana, the meeting place for the middle classes, the mood is optimistic.
Nós estamos passando por momento diferente da Europa.
We're going through a totally different phase to Europe. We don't have serious financial problems like Europe and the USA because we were very well prepared for this development.
Politics, the economy, the oil industry, everything is improving, everything is expanding. I think that a lot of investment capital has flowed into Brazil because of the crisis in Europe.
Brazil has become the 6th largest economy in the world, and all levels of society want to profit from it.
Brazil is trying to reach the level of other countries in the first world. Everything is improving, not only in the tourism sector, but also regarding safety and security. Everything. I think we have a better country now.
Eles querem botar a violência sob controle para a Copa do Mundo. Agora você tomou conta.
The violence is only being tackled because of the World Cup. A lot of tourists already feel safe in the favelas because the criminals have been chased away from there. But they're still at large. They just move into a different city area and carry on committing crimes. But we Brazilians base a lot on appearances. You build a cable car in a slum and immediately think all the problems have been solved. I'm very skeptical. We have to invest much more in social projects.
Around 2 million people live in the favelas. We visit an area in the north of Rio where strangers would not have shown their faces a short while ago, but times have changed.
You can see that it's not particularly attractive here, but still, I think it's now like paradise. You can imagine what it looked like here before. It was hell. Rubbish, fires, vermin, the stink. It was one big rubbish dump. As a child, I ate from this tip to survive, like most of the others did too. Once I soaked a piece of chicken in water and all these worms came out of it. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Incrível, né? Não parece?
Luis works as an internet TV reporter for his district. Everyone knows him here, and he knows every nook and cranny in this favela.
Look, we have a cash machine. It's open 24 hours a day, here in the middle of our favela. Every day armoured cars come and bring large amounts of money and leave it here. In the past, something like that would have been unthinkable. It accepts all credit cards, and you can come and get money here, no problem.
How long has this machine been here?
since the government support program was introduced, since the pacification program.
The pacification program is the name given to the government's new strategy. And this is how the new peace looks. For 2 years now, the district has been occupied by the military. These soldiers are guarding Rio's latest landmark, a modern cable car. It functions as a means of public transport for the 100,000 people who live in this rough, chaotic collection of slums. Up to 3,000 people per hour can be transported in air-conditioned cabins for the ticket price of €0.50. It takes only 15 minutes to cover the distance of 3.5 kilometers that connects the 6 hills and the favelas that have been erected around them. Comfortable journey by cable car directly into the center of the city provides a connection with the bus and train network. The journey times in Rio and its surrounding areas have become shorter. Altogether, 12 million people live here. The economic growth has resulted in many new jobs. Since 2003, 20 million Brazilians have been able to rise out of poverty to join the middle classes. More and more people from the favelas now have a steady job.
Now I no longer have to climb the hill on foot. I ride down to work and back home again, always in these gondolas. It's wonderful. The only thing is, I've put on a few kilos. I was much thinner before, now I'm fat. But still, for me, the cable car is the only way.
Cable cars as a means of transport for the slums are not a Brazilian invention. Colombia and Venezuela have already had positive experiences with them. At an international seminar in the center of Rio, strategies for future-oriented urban development are being discussed. The Argentinian architect Jorge Jauregui was responsible for the construction of Rio's cable car. His visions for the metropolis of the future have won him worldwide recognition. His colleague Hubert Klumpner has come from Venezuela. The professor of architecture and urban design from Salzburg also worked on the construction of the cable car in Caracas.
In Latin America, there are a number of reference projects that are recognized worldwide as reference and best practice projects. Today, they are published frequently in Asia and Africa. Nobody knows anything about this in Europe. Because today the countries in the south are cooperating with each other. So if companies like Doppelmayr, for example, don't break into these circles, then they won't get asked to do these things.
The renowned Austrian company Doppelmayr did not manage to land the 80 million contract. Instead, a French cable car construction company got it. This branch of construction is flourishing. Due to global population explosion, the megacities urgently need solutions for the growing problem of slum areas.
Only working-class people live in slum districts like the favelas. And why do they live in slums? Because society as a whole is incompetent. It does not offer these people dignified living conditions, fair work, public transport. The state did nothing for too long, so these settlements have grown chaotically and without any control. Today, politicians have to understand that they must give the problem zones priority, with large investments in the best available infrastructure. We ride on the cable car all day long.
It's nice, but I'm afraid.
Look over there. That house collapsed today. It happened today. Fortunately, nobody was injured. No one lived there anymore. The people had already been moved.
Numerous houses have had to make way for the cable car. The inhabitants either got compensation or they were rehoused in new social housing. In other areas of the city, the demolition of illegal settlements gave rise to protests. But we haven't met anyone here who complained about it.
It's much better here. I used to live up there on the hill. That was very difficult. Here I have everything I need to buy on my doorstep. A lot of things are better.
Everybody here is happy with the new support program.
Are the flats nice inside?
Compared to before, they're like palaces.
But because of the showpiece projects, other important redevelopment tasks are being neglected.
All the houses here were due to be pulled down in the original project, like here. The houses that used to be here were demolished in order to widen the road. That's important, but we don't know if they're going to continue. The money's run out. All the favela land belongs to the state, but the houses belong to the residents. The government paid for every demolished house. But if they don't continue, someone will soon move in here and put up a house in this gap.
The plan is to allocate land to the inhabitants of the favela, but until now this has just remained a plan. But still, Luis praises all the progress made in his quarter. We accompany him home.
The young people can't complain. If they don't get an education here, then it's their own fault. There are enough opportunities.
Luis's family receives state family support, the so-called Bolsa Familia, and the children get everything they need for school free from the state.
President Lula was excellent in both of his periods of office, especially for us in the favela Alemão.
O Lula é o cara, o Lula é o cara, entrou nas comunidades sem gastar nenhuma bala. O Lula é o cara, o Lula é o cara.
In one of the gondolas, we meet another Lula fan who spontaneously sings us a self-composed hymn of praise to the ex-president.
E mostrou o seu valor. O Lula é o cara, o Lula é o cara, entrou nas comunidades sem gastar nenhuma bala.
Today, the newspapers report that the charismatic ex-president Ignacio Lula da Silva is recovering well from his cancer. There is also a photo of the president Dilma Rousseff arriving in India. The former fighter with the left-wing guerrilla movement took over as head of state from the former leader of the Metalworkers Union. She is following and even accelerating Lula's successful path, the fight against poverty combined with economic growth. Today, the president is taking part in the summit of the BRICS states in New Delhi: Brazil, Russia, China, India and South Africa. They are still known as emerging countries, although they are already world powers.
In recent years, the BRICS states have become the most important engine of the world economy. Together, we account for more than half of the forecast economic growth for 2012. 55% according to the calculations of the International Monetary Fund. This phenomenon compensates for the reduction in demand from Europe and the USA and alters the geometry of the international trade and investment flow.
However, the good news on the economic front is accompanied by a disturbing report. The front page announces that the favela that we have just visited is going to be occupied tomorrow by elite units from the military. We set off to observe the action at close hand. The Special Commando Unit BOP was already used here in November 2010 in a decisive strike against the drug cartels in this quarter. It is said that the supposedly incorruptible but brutal elite forces were given a free hand to kill. They opted for confrontation. 37 people died in conditions resembling a civil war. Then the state sent in the regular army in order to keep organized crime out of the favela for good. After 2 years, the first stage of the pacification program has been completed. The regular army is now withdrawing. It is needed at another problem zone. Everything seems to be in order here. Seems, anyway. At the same time, the elite troops are entering the heart of the favela. But in contrast to 2010, this time not one shot is fired. The reason for this is probably that the military action had been announced the day before on the front page of the newspaper. There are only 6 women in the ranks of the black uniformed troops with the death head emblem. Captain Melissa Neves acts as press spokeswoman. She confirms that a new strategy is being implemented.
If we have to choose between a person running away or losing his life, then we prefer it if someone runs away. We're in favor of life.
Some gang members have moved to slums further away, but most of them have stayed in their familiar environment and keep a low profile. But people's fear of them remains. Luis prefers to keep silent about a lot of things. At home, he works on his internet TV reports, but he only talks about the positive developments in his area. He carefully avoids the conflicts. 2 years ago, a 51-year-old reporter was brutally murdered here. He was caught trying to secretly film some drug barons having a sex orgy with minors.
The gang caught him, took him up the hill, and then executed him using the so-called microwave method. They put him in a pile of car tires, doused him in petrol, set fire to him and burnt him alive. That's how Tim Lopez died. If you wanted to kill me today, you'd just have to say, I saw him with someone from outside. He's a traitor. They'd force their way in here and finish me off. It's enough just to say that someone is a traitor.
Luis looks after the children while his wife is out working all day as a cleaner. Not long ago, Luis was afraid to let his children play outside. Shots were fired at all times of the day. The gang members wore their weapons for show. The residents had to protect themselves from them and from the corrupt police and the brutal mob. Today, the Special Commando Unit adopts a softer approach.
The elite troops are very tough and efficient. Even the criminals are afraid of them.
Are they less corrupt than the police?
Much less.
The men in black will withdraw again. They will be followed by the so-called peace police. They represent the final part of the new pacification program.
A police station for the peace police is being built here. It's not finished yet, but they'll be coming soon.
Until now, 20 peace police stations have been erected at different critical points in the city. By the time the Football World Cup takes place, there should be 40. the figure of 50 murders a day has to be reduced fast. 500 new applicants begin their training every month. 6,000 new peace police every year. They will help to turn the slums into civil state structures, establish contact with the inhabitants, and all without weapons.
I've experienced different times. I was even shot. Today I can walk around here alone, unarmed and unafraid. We're experiencing a big change in all parts of the city, where we're stationed permanently.
The peace police's assignment is to clear the favelas of weapons, but with a softly approach.
We want to make it clear that we are not fighting drug trafficking. Unfortunately, that will always exist, everywhere. It also exists in the middle and upper class residential areas and at universities. Drug dealing is just treated differently there. Here in the favelas, heavily armed drug gangs are terrorizing the local population. We can't permit that.
Were we hearing right? Is Brazil turning away from the US strategy of war on drugs? We are surprised that this is being expressed so openly and ask other responsible persons.
Drug trafficking will always exist all over the world, but here we have a problem of pure violence. The drug barons used to keep the people under control with their weapons, but that situation does not exist here anymore.
It's true that some drug dealers are moving into some favelas that are not yet occupied. But we are also observing that many are staying and that crime is decreasing. The dealers are keeping in the background. They don't want to be seen with weapons. They're less violent. And they know that we are only here to fight violence. But they continue to run their illegal trade in secret. And they know that they won't have any problems unless they threaten someone. That's the big difference. The problem for the police in Rio is that they are fighting against the illegal import of weapons from all over the world.
The Ministry of Justice uses video clips to warn of the dangers of handguns.
Alguém de seu futuro. Não use, não tenha. Tire uma arma do futuro do Brasil. Acesse entreguesuaarma.gov.br e saiba onde entregar.
Ministério da Justiça, Governo Federal.
The majority of weapons on the black market are manufactured in Brazil, but Antonio Rangel expresses criticism that the Brazilian drug scene is a profitable business for the international weapons industry too. The anti-weapons activist acts as advisor to several governments.
Unlike the drugs, the weapons were produced legally. Drugs are illegal from start to finish, from the production to the consumption. But 99% of weapons are manufactured legally. Only on the legal market can you prevent a legal weapon from falling into the hands of illegal traders. Consider a Glock pistol that is sold to Paraguay. If the Austrian government knows that the illegal arms trade in Paraguay is enormous and that Latin American drug dealers like to buy their weapons in the shops in Paraguay, then the Austrian government also knows that it is highly probable that arms that are exported to Paraguay will end up with the Brazilian drug traders. I mentioned this as an example. Each government is responsible for controlling its own exports. And even in capitalist countries, the companies have a social responsibility. Weapons are not like laptops or mobile phones. Weapons are instruments for killing.
A few favelas where there is no shooting anymore have become tourists' attractions. Like the favela Santa Marta, where Michael Jackson made the film for his world hit They Don't Care About Us. Here tourists can get an impression of a society on the fringes, a society that was virtually invisible until a short while ago.
The tourist guide yesterday said it is a very rich country. We're full, with oils and minerals, and yet it's a rich country, and yet there's so much poor people. So I just don't understand. And it must be because of the corruption in the place.
A lot is changing in Rio. You notice that due to the next big events in 2014 and 2016, the Football World Cup and the Olympic Games. A great deal is starting to change.
It was very nice here.
Yeah, nothing as we expected. It's nice to see that a favela isn't something dangerous.
The guests at the coming sporting mega events in Rio shouldn't be afraid. Brazil's government is determined about this. But the question remains as to whether they will continue to carry out the reforms afterwards and how sustainable they will be in the end.
A lot still has to be done for the health system, education, the hygiene conditions and the infrastructure. But people believe in change because they've seen positive signs that they would not have dreamt possible. The abstract has become reality. Before, no one took any notice of us. Today, there is a state presence that we never had before.
The Conference on Sustainable Development Rio+20 has recognized that the fight against poverty is a cornerstone for the saving of our planet. 800 million people live in slums worldwide. Every year, there are 6 million more. In Brazil, on the other hand, the slum quarters have shrunk by 16%, according to the UN. The experiments in Rio can serve as an example for many other mega cities.